Paradise Production.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome back to another edition of the Minor League Take. I'm your host, Brett Case, and this week we have a very good friend of mine, Eric Sexton. Me and Eric played together back at Rollins back in the day. He grinded his ass off. Was a JUCO bandit not JUCO bandit, a JV. What do we call you guys?
Cats.
The JV Cats. That's right.
Yeah.
The JV Cats. You were a JV Cat for a while, and you worked your ass off, and you got to varsity, and you helped us out a bunch. What's going on, man? How you been?
Doing well, man. Like I said, living the dream. Still found a way to stay in baseball. A little bit different than what you're doing. Didn't throw hard enough to stick in it the way you have. But
yeah,
and I appreciate you having me on. I love what you're doing with this thing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, when you reached out the other day after I posted a slow-mo video, I was like, holy shit, this could be a really cool avenue, because I know you work with Baseball Cloud now. And yep. I mean, the tech side of baseball has been exploding over the past, what would you say, like 10 years?
Yeah. Trying to catch up with golf. I mean, the technology's been around in a variety of sports for a long time, but really, yeah, specifically like in terms of the technology we're talking about and the data that we'll get into, really since 2015, when MLB StatCast became a thing, is when it really started to take off. Yeah,
man. I mean, so Baseball Cloud, they have their own, is it their own technology? Because they're not exactly TrackMan, are they?
Yeah, exactly. So Baseball Cloud is actually the software that digests data from all of, so like TrackMan, we consider to be like one of the hardware companies that actually captures the information. So you've got companies like TrackMan, Hawkeye, now YakkerTech, Rapsodo, Blast Motion. The list goes on of all these technologies that capture pitching data, hitting data, all sorts of stuff. And Baseball Cloud was created to take all of that information because it spits out a lot of stuff, a lot of numbers. And our job is to basically make that usable for coaches and players. So we want to get that information to a point where if I'm a pitching coach, I can bring it to you before a bullpen or after an outing, and I can actually use this data to help you get better.
Yeah. Holy shit. All right. Well, damn, that's pretty impressive. I've heard of, I mean, most of those. I've heard of Blast Motion. That's the baseball bats, like you little put on the knob, right?
Yep.
And then
exactly. There's like a couple different kind of I guess you could call it like categories of the data capturing. So you've got like the highest end would be Hawkeye, which is what Major League Baseball now uses for StatCast. That's about 20 cameras. It's in a big league park. It's roughly $1 million to install the system, and it's fully optical technology that captures everything that's happening on a baseball field. So
it's $1 million.
Yeah, give or take. Depends on the installation, from $500,000 to $1 million, depending on the setup and infrastructure and everything. It's crazy, but yeah, it's it basically, starting from way back when it was just a radar gun in a stadium and you're just getting velocity.
Yeah.
Working your way up through a few years ago, it's capturing spin rate, break and movement on a baseball. Now we're at the point where we can actually track what players are doing. So you can see where a center fielder started, see where the fly ball landed, and measure like how efficient their route was to go track down a fly ball in the gap. Like, and we're getting sprint speeds. We're getting now kind of towing the water. I'm sure you've probably heard about like the biomechanics stuff now. So like how your arm is actually moving, how your hips are moving, like on the field in game, like that's where things going. So it's like growing like crazy, and the stuff we're able to capture now is like, so almost monthly something new comes out. That's
I was gonna say, I feel like a year ago, 2 years ago, I was like, damn, like we're kind of hitting like the limit on what we're gonna measure, and it sounds like we're finding even more and more things every single day.
Just scratching the surface. Like, when the stuff became mainstream as far as like the data stats, if you want to call it that. I mean, Moneyball was just kind of focused on results. So like, what are players doing? Are they getting outs? Are they getting on base? All that stuff.
And then you're asking the question of why.
Right. Why and how exactly. So when TrackMan came about, it's like, all right, this guy gets on base a lot. Well, we now know it's because he doesn't chase pitches out of the strike zone. When he swings at pitches in the strike zone, he's consistently finding barrels. And then, so that's kind of the second step. And then like you said, the why or how. Well, all right, the dude gets on base. He gets on base because he barrels balls up and he doesn't expand the strike zone. Now we're at the step at this point and going into like, how does he barrel the ball up? Like, how does he get his body in that position consistently? And what does he need to work on to maybe improve consistency or power or whatever you're working on? So we're almost like completing the picture of how players, produce the results they produce, and then how to get there, how to develop guys.
Holy shit, dude. I don't even, that is just so complex. That is sick.
Yeah.
We just started installing a Hawkeye system on like one of our backfields,
Yep.
which I was like, oh, that's cool. Cause as far as I understand with that technology, it's the combination of Rapsodo and TrackMan, like putting it both together.
Hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of how that works? I don't even.
Yeah. It's somewhat complicated in the sense of like how it actually captures the information. So like TrackMan and flight. I don't know if you remember like when Marcelo first brought a flight scope out to the
Yeah, I
field.
remember those.
Those technologies are radar based. So it's using Doppler radar technology, and you can read all about it. It gets pretty geeky, but we've gotten to the point now where Major League Baseball now you're seeing like Hawkeye cameras. So
Yeah.
they're shifting from radar to optical, which is what Hawkeye uses, which is what a company we just acquired, Yacker Tech, which is what they use. And it basically you're going from basically like with the radar, it sees where the ball's released, it sees where it crosses home plate, and everything in between is kind of inferred. It's like a math problem. Whereas with these, the easiest way to put it with the optical technologies is these cameras are actually seeing the seams of the baseball. It's seeing it frame by frame on its way to home plate. So when you're talking about needing increased
Okay.
accuracy and speed of data delivery, like the cameras are actually seeing the baseball move. So you can get a little bit more information from it.
And that's how, as far as I understand, that's how Rapsodo generally works. It takes a picture,
Mhm.
couple pictures as the ball's coming out of your hand, and then it goes, okay, well, it's moving this many times. Like this seam was there, so that
Right.
means it's going to be spinning at 2100 RPMs with X amount of break. Well, then it kind of starts assuming and guessing all the movement stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So every piece of tech's a little bit different in how they do it. They're all trying to get to the same thing, which is ultimately like, what did the pitcher, what did the hitter do to this baseball? And then the more information we can extract from it, the more questions we can ask, because it goes from, the starting point of this is always like, all right, so it's thrown this hard. Then we figured out how fast it's spinning. And then it took a year or two to figure out what that actually means. Because at first it's like, all right, I have a 2200 spin rate on my fastball. Like, cool. All right, awesome. That's good to know. Like,
Yeah, which is insane. Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, that's awesome. We can figure it out. But like, if I'm a pitcher and I'm trying to get guys out, like, how does that help me? So then the more data. So a big part of what we do is like we accumulate mass amounts of data, which allows us to actually find answers to these questions. So, and that's what it takes a lot of times. So it's like the first step is being able to capture it. All right, now we learn how the baseball spins. That's awesome. The next part is, all right, so what does this mean? So the more pitches you accumulate, you can start to answer questions like, okay, interesting. So guys who have high spin on their fastballs with high velocity, we're looking at all the data. It's right in front of us in a report. They get more swings and misses up in the strike zone. So when you start to look at like Garrett Cole, how he changed from early in his career where he's like kind of sinking the ball.
Yeah, the
throwing
Pirates had him
away.
throwing sinkers and
yeah, exactly. And then they were able using the data to find out like, hey man, across the league, fastballs that move like this, the highest whiff rates are actually up here. So in the bullpen, like we're bagging those, low and away fastballs to start your bullpen. Let's execute a few four seams like right here, down the middle, up in the zone, and start to like think that way. And it doesn't mean, and again, using the data, that doesn't mean that that's going to work for everybody. You need that velocity and that spin and those release qualities to create that movement. But it's kind of cool. It's almost like if you look at the data the right way, it can almost give you the answers. So maybe all of your pitches are great, or like on the hitting side, since we've been talking pitching, like maybe your swing's great. There's nothing wrong you're doing. Maybe your timing's not right, or maybe you're just swinging at the wrong pitches. So
yeah, the swing stuff is just crazy over my head. I think that's the next step I got to take to like learn about the game more. Cause I mean, I'll sit off like when I was a starting pitcher and I would sit in the dugout for, 4 days in a row. I would watch the hitters on the other team and just go, okay, he looks like he's just trying to go the other way. Or he looks like he's just trying to find something low he can just drop the head on. Like those were basically like the best observations I was taking. But now you're saying this new technology could pitchers almost use it to go, okay, well, this swing's not conducive to hit my changeup. So let's throw my changeup a million times to this guy.
Exactly. And the more data you get on your opponents, the more you're able to figure that stuff out. So like, what does he do against pitchers that have these movement qualities? Do I possess those or do I not? And then you're almost kind of like reverse engineering your approach to them. So, and then ultimately, like, depending on the kind of guy you are, I mean, there's also the element of you have to pitch to your strengths too. So just because the guy struggles with curveballs doesn't mean, all right, my curveball is my fourth best pitch. That doesn't mean you just throw them all curveballs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So there's kind of two pieces to it. But I think a combination of knowing your strengths as a player and then being educated on your opponents as well, using those two to kind of piece together what's going to be the best strategy. And the best clubs at the big league level have gotten to that point where it's almost like, not turning the players into robots. You still got to go out and compete, but it's almost like you have the answers to a test ahead of time. Like if
that phrase exactly is what I love to talk about when I'm talking about like doing my scouting and like watching guys. Because this year, especially like, and I'm in the bullpen now, so I don't get the same kind of view. But on Mondays, we would always have an off day. Monday, I would sit there for an hour, watch the team's lineup from the week before, go through it. And I referred to it as getting the answers to the test before the test, because I would see at least their approach, their swing, what they did to certain pitches, stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not, me sitting there watching video is helpful, but sitting there and combing through the data and understanding that this kid can't hit a curveball because of his swing path, I feel like that's even crazy. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, you're getting even more answers to the test that weren't even supposed to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And even, using the information, like if going into an outing that, this dude in the 2-hole that I'm facing tonight, he's been thrown 75 breaking balls on 0-0 counts this year. He's only swung at 2 of them. He lets them all go. So basically, like if you just know that one piece of information going into an outing, you've already gotten yourself to a point where if I can just land one for a strike, I know this guy's not going to swing, even if it's shitty, right? Like, so I don't even have to get off my best pitch, but if I land it for a strike, the data shows that I'm going to be ahead 0-1 on this guy all night, all 3 times I faced him. So, and that can be in the inverse for the hitting side. We've got Johnny Gomes on our team now as like a brand ambassador for us, and being 13 years in the big leagues, he's got a ton of stories about this stuff. But I mean, the one that he told actually a week or 2 ago to us, he was talking about Yu Darvish, and they were diving into the data, and he found out that every time Darvish, it was like a trend leading up to them facing him, but it's like every time he threw a fastball over 97 miles an hour, I think it was, like those pitches were 80% out of the strike zone. But when he toned it back down to like 94, 95, that's when he started to throw strikes with the heater. So he went in with the mentality of, if sit on like when you're sitting fastball, you're sitting trying to time up 93, 95. If you're late, you're taking, because chances are, based on like the trend he's at, when he ramps up on one and lets it go, it's going to ride up on him and be a ball. So that's what he's like, his at bat against him. He was like, all right, first pitch, 98, ball. All right, I was late. Let it go, ball. Next pitch, 97, ball. And then he's like, got ahead in the count, timed up a fastball at like 94, 95, and I think he went yard on it or hit a double or something. But he put himself in a position where he had, like we talked about, had an advantage going into the at-bat, had confidence in the strategy. And all that wasn't him changing his swing. That wasn't him doing anything as a player. That was just him being more educated. And that's really what we try to do at Baseball Cloud, is just provide those answers quickly, make it easy for coaches and players to be able to get that info. Because back in the day when he first started playing, like when he was with the Double Rays, he talks about like he literally had to go grind through hours of video and watch. Like if he wanted information on the starter he was about to face, he had to go watch their starts and write down what was happening, or go pull data, or sit down with an analyst, and it would take hours. Like it was a grind.
Something like picking up that, when he throws it over 97, he doesn't throw a strike.
Right.
Like something like that wouldn't come up unless he was sitting there like tallying all those times.
Exactly. And we've gotten to the point with our software, with what we can do with technology, that you don't have to dig for that. That's gonna be flagged. That's gonna be identified as a trend. So the goal is, you've only got so many hours at the field. You've only got so much time to prepare during the grind of a season. And on the college side, which is like our biggest market right now, is the college baseball teams that they don't have millions of dollars to build their own analytics department like pro teams do. So they come to us, so they don't have to build it. They just, they use our stuff. But we're trying to get it to the point where they can just hit print on a scouting report, and we take the data and actually turn that into information for them, and they don't have to spend hours digging for stuff. So
that is crazy. That is nuts. Do me one favor though.
Sure.
Don't sell it to Tampa yet. Okay. Don't tell it to UT, because Rollins and the rest of the SSC needs like some kind of a chance against those guys. Yeah.
Sadly, it might be a little late for that. Those guys are, those guys are starting to utilize it. And again, it's really, the other thing of what we do, we're trying to make this stuff cheaper and more affordable. So it's not just the power fives and the powerhouses of the world with big donors that can afford it. Like we really want this to grow at all levels, even down to like high schools, to be able to use this. Like I want to be able to get a report on myself and how I compare to the average hitter at Rollins, because I want to play in the Sunshine State Conference. So I'd like to see the data. How far, I'm 16 years old. How far away am I from being able to play at that level, or do I even have a chance? Right. So using the data,
that'd be extremely helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, could you say almost like there's a chance, like, all right, I take a look at my scouting report on myself. Well, I kind of did actually do this at one point in the season. They had taught me to throw a sinker this past season. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And I'm throwing it and it's showing me like good movement numbers. I'm like, damn, like 4 to 6 inches of vertical ride. Like that's awesome. Like, let's keep on pounding that, because I'm getting it low in the zone.
Yep.
But then, June, July rolled around and every team in our league went, oh, this is their sinker ball guy. Just wait for him to throw a sinker and fucking smack it. And sure enough, they started crushing me. And I was like, dude, what's going on? And it was always the sinker they were hitting. So I went, all right, let's start throwing 4 seams. And I brought in my 4 seam and I just started riding it at the top of the zone at 89, 90. And I was starting to beat guys again. But
Yep. No, that's a great example too. And you see it at the big league level all the time. I mean, the guys that stick around the longest are the ones that are able to make adjustments. I mean, I think it was a few years back, I think it was Trout. He had that whole kind of up and in. Yeah. Guys like, and it don't, again, going back to the idea of the more data you have, the more answers you're going to get, the quicker you're going to get to those answers. So he builds those at bats in the big leagues. Obviously he's tearing up the whole league, but once he saw enough pitches, those guys had the reports like, oh, there's a little hole here. There it is. There's a little, the entire heat map's red, but here's a little bit of blue. Like, all right, let's just hammer that. And how long did it take him to close that?
Dude, not long. We were literally talking about it at the field last week. We were like, yeah, Trout's crazy. Like, remember when he first came up and guys were just throwing fastballs up and they started hitting home runs on fastballs up and everyone was like, oh shit, now what do we do?
Exactly. So, I mean, the good ones, and you mentioned it, all right? I mean, just because your sinker's good or it's got the right qualities doesn't mean, I mean, you had to make an adjustment, right? I mean, the results weren't backing up. Like, that wasn't your goal to get hit around. So you don't just like blindly stick with what the report says is your best pitch. Like you've got to get guys out at the end of the day. So this is only part of the puzzle, but it gets to the point where it's not going to tell you what to do. It's just going to be that guide and you still have to go out and figure it out.
Yeah. Is now a good time to bring up that report that I sent you so we can, anyone that's watching on YouTube can get a chance to like kind of see, the stuff that we go through or that we get presented. And then
let me,
or we can pull up an example of something else, or we can pull up a Caleb Jakes file.
Airdrop. You want to pull up the report you just sent me, right?
Yeah, we can do that. So what are the first things that you take a look at when you see something like this? This isn't exactly what everybody gets. Like the Pirates, this is what we make, just to clarify for everybody. But what's like the first thing that like pops out to you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they're wanting at the top of the screen, obviously starting with your stat line and like what kind of outing you had. So I guess that would be the first step. When you're looking at a report or, the data that you're about to dive into, you're going to have in your head what went wrong that day or what went right. So like,
not a good day, not a good day.
Not a good day. So it's like, all right, like there could be a variety of reasons you might have in your head what was off or what didn't feel good that day. I mean, you would be the most qualified, obviously, to go into if you remember the specific outing. Like
I do. Yeah, I remember this one. We were just at the end of our week. We had run out of pitching and our starter went 5. And they were like, Brad, we kind of need you to go 4 innings here. The first 3 innings was like 3 innings, 1 hit. It was a home run. But like otherwise, like I was pitching really well. And then God, dude, I went after that 9th inning. It was just like, I was just tired and I'm just trying to throw strikes. And it was just one of those innings where I'm like, yo, please find a glove right now. Like, please somebody catch this ball that's going to get hit.
Right. Yeah. And I noticed too, I'm just kind of looking through here and I hadn't seen this like format of a report before, but just kind of looking at it. I mean, your OO. So this is another good example, right? So your OO, I believe that's in zone percentage. So you were 94% OO. Throwing pitches in the strike zone. I don't know if you remember specifically if guys were jumping on you early, but that could have been something they identified as like, all right, this guy likes to throw something over the plate early, so guys are just like primed and ready to go, right?
Yeah.
That could have been something. I'm trying to think. 2-1, yeah, 1-1. Yeah, I mean, so that's one thing. I mean, you're getting ahead in the count, all good stuff. But again, it's like there's pros and cons to all of it, right? I mean, throwing
Mhm.
strikes is a good thing. Throwing too many strikes or throwing strikes in certain areas might not be a good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If you
something that,
just laying it in there and it's at the top of the like middle of the zone, like thigh high, that's when I know I show up in trouble.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's interesting to too look at guys like DeGrom, like they throw a lot of strikes because they end up as strikes, but when you look at the locations of the pitches, they don't throw a ton of strikes. It's like they throw balls that look like strikes, or
Yep.
strikes that turn into balls, vice versa. Like you're really trying to. It's all about deception, right? So,
Yeah. The phrase I like to use to
and two,
myself.
like there's no, like on this report specifically, there's not like a chart that, say that again. Sorry.
There we go. We lagged a little bit.
Okay.
No, the phrase I like to use is like there's two types of pitches you want to throw. There's pitches you want guys to swing and miss at, like something in the zone to out of the zone, or something out of the zone into the zone. You never want to throw something that's just straight there the whole time, or something that's a ball the whole time. Like it's got to be one or the other, because if it's a strike the whole time, they're going to crush it. If it's a ball the whole time, they're going to let you walk them.
Yep, exactly. The other thing I like about this report too is it goes into release consistency, which for pitching I think is a really cool metric. And it looks like you were pretty dialed in on your release points, like everything was coming out of that same window. But this is another thing for anyone watching. It's a cool metric to have access to through this technology, because you see a lot of times like your slider, your cutter, your off-speed pitch might have nasty movement to it, and you might be locating it exactly how you want. But you're looking at the report and it's like, all right, why is no one swinging and missing at this? Why is no one chasing? And then you move, you're kind of going through your visuals, you're going through the data. And then we see guys sometimes, especially at the college level, when guys are, still developing, trying to repeat their mechanics, all that stuff. It's like, dude, my slider is nasty. It's got 15 inches of horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
The velocity is good. Like, why is no one biting on it? And then you look at the release point graph, and the release point's like 4 inches further arm side, and then like 6 inches lower than their fastball. So they're like dropping slot to create movement, because that's how they found to get this big sweep. But the hitters are picking up on it early. So they're able to see, just based on arm slot, like, hey, when this guy drops, like his slider is wicked, but you can see it early on. So just spit on it. And there's something to be said for that too. So when you look at just one data point, it could be like, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Like my slider is getting hammered and I'm not getting swings and misses on it, but all these break and movement numbers, it says it's nasty. Well, it's like, all right, well, you tipping it, maybe your release point's giving it away. Maybe your sequences are too predictable. So after you throw a fastball, you throw a slider every single time. Like you never go fastball. You're always going back and forth. Maybe they picked up on that. So again,
something that would get flagged, it would get picked up. Yeah,
exactly. So another Dome story was there was a guy he faced that after he threw a slider to righties, every single time he'd back it up with a changeup, and he picked up on that and had a ton of success on the guy. And it's not because the pitch was bad. The pitch was probably nasty. It's a big league changeup.
Oh, yeah.
When a big league hitter knows that changeup's coming, it doesn't matter if it's got good arm side run to it. It doesn't matter if you release it just right. If the guy knows it's coming, it's going to get barreled.
Screwed. Yeah.
So yeah, being able to have access to all this information and kind of tell the whole story, I think is pretty cool. I do like on this report too, to have context of, it looks like on that graph on the right, you're able to see where your stuff was that day compared to where it's been the entire season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another good thing too, whether you're on, whether you're off, you might be fatigued or whatever, but being able to have that immediate context of like, wow, okay, this was different than my last 5 outings. Like what's going on there? Is there a reason for that?
I think that chart over there on the right, I mean, that's my personal favorite one to look at. When I throw a bullpen, that's my eyes immediately go to that. Because for me, being a guy that throws so many different pitches, like I throw 5 different pitches, I need to make sure that they're all moving separately. I need to make sure that they're all doing the things they got to be doing, like my changeup and my sinker. At one point in the season, they started morphing closer and closer together, and I changed the changeup grip around and got some more drop on it because I don't want them being the same pitch movement profile wise.
Right. Yeah.
But cool, man. Yeah, I think this is stuff that like people aren't really going to see um typically, you know.
Yeah. It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff here, and that's where I mean, with companies like ours trying to make this stuff more mainstream, and then the other element too of it is like the want for this, the interest in it is out there, and kids that are younger and younger now coming up playing baseball, like they're growing up with technology, like,
Yeah.
and it's a different era. Like they're now able to practice hitting in a VR headset. Like that's not something we grew up with. Like we're still relatively
Yeah.
young. People look at us as young guys, but in terms of where the technology was at when we were coming up, like we didn't have this stuff in college, and we're fresh out of college in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like players are now at the point, especially like these top recruits from Perfect Game and all these different organizations, like they're used to playing and having these numbers captured on them. So now if I'm a college coach, I'm having a 17-year-old kid come on a visit and they're like, yeah, what kind of technology you guys have? Like, how are you going to help me develop? How are you going to help me get better?
Dude,
And
that's a great point.
if you're not prepared to answer that in terms of like, oh yeah, so every outing we're gonna have edgertronic video, we're gonna have your ball flight metrics with TrackMan, then we're gonna have for hitters we're gonna have swing sensors on you in practice to be able to track your bat path and bat speed and all that stuff. Like these are things that players are now expecting when they get to the next level. And they're training with it. Like these high school guys are throwing pitches and they're looking at the tablet right next to them and starting to make those connections with, all right, here's what I felt on that pitch. That was a good pitch. That was a bad pitch. And then you validate that with what the data says about it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, dude, they've even in the minor leagues, man, they've really stepped it up too. When I first got drafted, a Rapsodo would show up for like the top prospect guys, and then it would get pulled right off the field, and like no one would see it again. And now, like last year at spring training, it was like 5 guys lined up in a row with Rapsodos, Edgetronics. There was one, we only had one TrackMan because we didn't have a ton of those yet, but like every single mound had all the technology, all the information you could possibly get, dude. We would be in the middle of nowhere, Altoona, and our video guy would have to lug out like several cameras, like tripods, a computer, a LAN wide like cable setup, all that stuff just to get, just for us to throw our bullpens.
Yeah.
And just the attention to detail is insane.
Yeah, it's insane. And being in the industry, it's kind of cool because I'm seeing where like all this stuff is going, and we're a big part of trying to develop that. But again, like we're a technology and data company, but we're built by and run by baseball people. So in that example you just said, like I know from being at baseball practice and I know from dealing with baseball coaches, like that's not a process that's realistic. If I'm a Division II college or a junior college or even a D1 for that matter, or a pro team, like I don't want to have to hire somebody full time to have to manage this. I don't want to have a 20-minute setup process before I throw bullpens. Like I think the information's sick. I think all this stuff's important. It's really cool to have. But if this is taking me like a PhD in rocket science and it's taking me an hour to set up, then fuck it, dude. Like it's not that like I got to get bullpens done. I got to get 15 guys to throw today. So on our side, like when we're trying to grow the business, it's like, how do we get this to a point? How do we get the technology to a point where, dude, it's just flip a switch and go. Like
the best way to do it is just permanent setups, like hardwired, like just screwed into the wall. So it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where a lot of it's moving to. I know, especially like players in the off season like to have something portable to be able to like drop in the cage, or if they're bouncing around mounds, or if they're going indoor, outdoor, kind of switching it up. There is an advantage to having something that's portable. The disadvantage, at least at this point and where the technology's at, anything that's portable, you have to calibrate when you set it up.
True.
And little differences in calibration can make a big difference in the data that gets spit out. So if this thing's off by a degree, it goes from you release the ball 6 feet off the ground. If it's miscalibrated or misaimed, then you actually released it 6 feet off the ground, but the machine says you released it 5 foot 8 inches off the ground. So then you get the report back and you look at the data from your season or the data from your game mound, and you're like, all right, well, did I actually drop my arm slot today? I felt it. No, but I mean, it's technology. So you're going to have challenges like that. Like everyone, a big part of like getting players to buy in is having stuff that works. Like I know, like if you're pitching and you're like, you remember a specific pitch that you put it on the black, or if it was up, it was down. And after the game, the report says you're going to look at the pitch you gave up a home run on, and it says it was like down the middle, but you remember specifically it was like on the edge of the plate. You're like, wait, that's not right. Like if the technology is
and then you just discount it. You're just like, this isn't even working.
Then you're just like, oh, well, if this is wrong, then what else is wrong? Like if it can't even get the pitch location right, then why am I going to believe that my pitch moved like that? Like I think I have more movement than that or whatever. So like that's a big thing too, like getting the tech to the point where it's reliable and consistent, and it's not just a bunch of guys going like, I don't know what to trust. Like that was a big thing at the college level, is guys would have Rapsodo in the bullpen, and then they'd throw their game outings on a TrackMan. And those two technologies work differently. So they're spitting out different numbers. So the guy's like, which one do I believe? Like, does my slider have 10 inches of movement, or does it have 17 inches of movement? I don't know which, like, do I believe
which one
that
to trust?
Or like that one's more expensive, so I'm going to believe that one. And maybe the truth's somewhere in the middle, but that's a lot of.
I feel like baseball players are going to go, all right, whichever number's better. That's what I'm telling people.
Exactly. Yeah. And the same thing with velo. It's like, all right, well, let's put that velo on the scoreboard because that one's like 2 ticks higher. Like,
exactly. Yep.
I don't know what's right, but no, it's like we talked about, the tech is getting better. It's getting better quickly. I think eventually we're going to get to the point where there's going to be like a ground truth. Like, again, the technology now is seeing the baseball. It's not just trying to like do math problems. So I think that's the next step in being able to say like, no, this is accurate. It actually saw it. It's not like trying to calculate anything. So
if you could build like what would be like the truth, like the absolute perfect machine to like watch a baseball game and break it down, what would you like? What are the factors you would want it to like capture?
Yeah. Honestly, like the closest thing to that right now is what's being used at the big league level with that Hawkeye system, because I think everything that it gets with those cameras and the lenses is really important. For me, I think it's pretty cool that with optical technology, you can start to get into things that you can actually like control as a player. So for example, something we're looking into, like it's one thing to know how your pitch is moving, or it's one thing to know like what your spin rate is and this and that. But you hear all the time, it's like, all right, once the ball leaves my hand, like, what happens after that? There's a bunch of factors that could affect it. Like the weather, the humidity, maybe like the elevation. It's like, that's going to change.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say Colorado, like could have an effect on it.
It changes everything. So that stuff's all important to be able to know. But like with the cameras, we're going to start to get to the point where we can capture like pitch grips, and you like after the game, you can see like your finger pressure and where your fingers were actually at on the baseball and how it left your hand. And we've got software that's able to display that. But once we get to the point where the technology is reliable enough, like absolutely you'll be able to look back and like, guys all the time, they lose feel for a pitch. It's like, dude, without realizing it, has my thumb moved and I just like through time, like I didn't realize that,
being able to like reteach somebody and show somebody like the differences and the similarities in a pitch, like from 2 different times. Like my breaking ball sophomore year, I loved it. Like I punched out a ton of guys with it. And then junior year, I had no idea where it was going.
Yep.
I was like, please break. I was like, please spin right now.
Right. And when you throw enough pitches, like things over time are just going to happen. So I'll actually pull up here so we can reference it a little bit better. So this is our product called Baller. And what this does is basically just focuses on all of the data that is collected at the release of a pitch. So what we're able to actually show here is like how the ball spun out of your hand. So after a pitch, you can actually see. So what this is showing here is like, we can essentially turn a baseball into like a globe and then start to do some fingerprint analysis and grip analysis. So you can start to say like, when my fingers are this far apart versus when my fingers are this far apart, what is that doing to movement, right?
Oh.
So we've got a lot of guys starting to track their grips and be able to say like, all right, this grip here is like my get me over breaking ball. So this is one, it doesn't move as much. It doesn't bite as hard, but I feel really comfortable that I can land it for a strike. And then you can have a grip that's like, all right, this is my like 0-2 put away one where I'm just trying to, I'm trying to throw it to a spot. It might not end up there, but I know it's going to have some hard bite to it. It's going to have some extra movement. So you've got guys basically
this is crazy.
Yeah. So we're actually able to take the data points from your grip and like measure distances between your fingers and say like, all right. And again, it goes back to like, let's collect more data. Like guys who have the nastiest sliders in baseball, like on average, where do they put their thumb? Is it directly under? Is it more off to the side? We don't know. But like our job is to basically collect the data and try to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And again, it might be personal preference, but again, it all goes back to like being able to track it. Like I love listening to guys like talk, like Tyler Glass now. He's like pretty self-aware about like what he does. And I've heard him talk before about, when he's not going well, he's like accidentally cutting his fastball and he doesn't even necessarily know why. But to be able to have that immediate feedback, potentially in game or in bullpen, be like, damn, all right, I got to get behind it. Like that could really help.
I remember when he blew out his elbow because he couldn't use sticky stuff anymore. He was talking about how like the ball just like he had to hold it differently and his form is getting tighter in different places. Like all that stuff just changed rapidly for him.
Yep.
And exactly. With this technology, I almost feel like you're going to be able to help him out and go, all right, well, this is what was happening before. Like these are adjustments we should try to make to try to keep you healthy.
Yeah. And we want to be able to validate that. So when a guy, you remember when he started saying that, where he's like, all right, well, if I use this stuff, he said, one of my cues was I need for my breaking ball, I need to hold it like an egg. So I want to feel like I'm barely touching the baseball. And that's when I get my best breaker. Well, when you don't have that tack, you can't hold it like an egg because you're going to throw it into the 15th row over the dugout. So if you don't have anything keeping your fingers on the baseball, by default, you're going to have to apply more pressure to that baseball to actually throw it. So him saying that, like as pitchers, we know, like, yeah, totally. Like we get it.
Yeah, like that's something we understand.
You remember when he first started saying that though, people are like, oh, he's full of shit. He just wants to cheat, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's no way. But like, how cool would it be to actually be able to show, because the technology can show us like, yeah, he increased his pressure. So he squeezed the ball 40% harder. You can see that with the cameras or with heat maps or whatever. And to actually be able to show like, yeah, he changed how he had to throw the baseball. Here was the difference. Or here, like he had to move his thumb to feel like he could get on top of it more because he didn't have as good of a grip. And you can actually capture, instead of having to go into video and like analyze it like it's fucking Bigfoot and try to zoom in, you can actually have the data to back up like, okay, yeah. Or like, from pitching, like some days, like maybe
some days it just feels good. Some days it doesn't.
Yeah. And some days in college, you're throwing off a mound or you're throwing with balls that just aren't as good. You have to, again, going back to the idea of like competing, you've got to make adjustments to just figure it out. Like, dude, I have a good feel for this pitch today. So I'm going to mess around between innings and warm-ups. After a shitty inning, I'm going to go in the bullpen and spin 3 of them to try to figure something out. Like to actually have that after the fact, to be able to see like, all right, why did this outing not go well? Well, all right, the balls they were using had these fat ass seams and I couldn't get a feel for it. And I had to move my finger, half an inch over.
That is incredible.
To have that at the back of it. Yeah.
That is insane, man. I mean, I thought I was like, I had a pretty good understanding of this stuff, but you are just blowing me away right now. This is crazy.
No. And honestly, it's just kind of like, I know the conversation's kind of winding around and we're talking about all the stuff it can do, but ultimately
there might be a lot of people really confused right now as to what the hell we're talking about, but
it's basically just to show that like, there's a lot of different things we can get. And ultimately like our job as a company and what you need and what coaches are trying to get to and analysts and organizations is like, all right, this was all to say that we can capture a lot of information, but like, if you can't deliver it effectively, then it's all useless. We can sit here and talk about fingerprints. We can talk about release point. All the stuff we've touched on is all really cool. And it's like, wow, that's badass. That could really help you out. But like, if it's not delivered effectively, then, or if it doesn't help a pitcher get more outs, then it's all worthless. So like, if someone's handing you a report and you don't know what the fuck it means, and you're just like, this is actually making me more confused.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so you just spent $50,000 on a system that tells you a bunch of information, but your pitchers aren't getting any better. Like there's teams out there that have all the technology in the world and their team ERA is still like a 6 at the end of the year. So it's like, all right, so our guys getting better? Maybe not, but ultimately the goal is to get outs and to win games. And if it's not helping you do that, then we've got to figure out how do we use this.
I think I got a good idea. If you guys got some interns that got nothing to do, just have them make YouTube videos all day. Just, all right, this is what spin rate is. This is what like spin axis, all like bullet spin, all like everything. Just break it all down. Cause we've, when I was at Cressy in January, he sat down with some, one of the pitching guys there sat down with the college guys, and I poked my head in and listened because I didn't even understand and know really what was going on. And then when I got to spring training in 2021, we had another meeting where we talked about it and broke all that stuff down. And it was ask whatever questions you want. There is no bad questions. They're like just anything you want to know, like ask it and we'll be able to break it down and figure it out.
Right.
Dude, you guys really are groundbreaking stuff, man. That is cool.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of stuff. And the coolest part about it is like actually being able to like, building products that help people win. Like we want to save coaches time. We want to save players time, and we want to give them resources that actually help, make a difference on the field. So it is really cool to hear stories and testimonials from people that use the products. And they're like, yeah, dude, like we used one of your scouting reports and it just, this chart lit up. Yeah, this chart lit up red. So we went into it and threw this pitch against these guys, and we shut them out 2 games in a row and gave up 1 run in the third game, and we got a sweep. And it's like they did it. We didn't do anything, but it's cool to actually see that you can have an effect like behind the scenes, and you've got guys within your organization that are doing the same thing for you. Like all the guys that are coding out those reports and doing the work. Like there's a lot of complicated stuff that goes on behind the scenes that leads to the point where a player is getting like, oh, dude, this guy throws 100% curveballs on 2-0 counts. Like, I can't wait to hit. I can't wait for my first.
Can't wait to get 2-0 and just.
Dude, if I get to 2-0, I'm swinging out of my freaking shoes, and and that was again, that's just one little piece of information. And if it can be delivered effectively, you've got a bunch of guys that go between the lines with a little bit more confidence because they feel like they've got a cheat code.
Yeah.
So that's
answers
where it gets
to the test.
Yeah, exactly. So I know I would have been all about this stuff. Like if I had this much information when I was still pitching, I would have loved to see like what it would have said about me or what it could have said about our pitching staff. Like I remember like we didn't, I know, especially when I was throwing, like I know the coaching staff wasn't big fans of like lefty changeups. And I had so many conversations. I'm like, dude, I swear this works. And I'm like talking to some of our hitters and I'm like, yo, when you're in this count against a lefty, what are you sitting on? Like,
it's the last thing you're looking for.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, dude, like guys either going to go fastball slider. It's a lefty. Like that's what they do.
Yeah.
Like, all right. Well, what about a changeup? They're like, yeah, that's eliminated. So I'm like, dude, like I had so many, especially like in inter squads, like Ashline, some of those guys are left-handed back. Like, I'm just like, all right, you fall behind. I'm like, use that changeup as a way to just drop it in. Like it can be a shitty changeup, but they're sitting They're sitting A or B. You throw C, they're going to be like, oh, shit. Exactly. So like, that's cool. I knew that in my head. It would have been really cool to have like the data to back that up. So I could like talk with, Pat or Rob or whoever and been like, yo, like, or to have the opponent data too. That would have been sick to be like going into a series against Florida Southern or Nova. And you've got these like scouting reports on these hitters. Like, yo, this guy never swings at this pitch in this count. So like, why even throw it? Like stuff like that is just really cool to me. It's fascinating.
Yeah, man, dude, that information, that technology is going to revolutionize baseball. And I think it really is going to become down to the only thing that could possibly beat this technology is guys being able to adjust consistently and constantly. Mm-hmm. Like we said earlier, just like if you all of a sudden become 0-2 changeup guy against lefties, people will go, okay, he's just going to throw me a changeup 0-2. And then you have to rotate into, all right, now fastball's up on 0-2. And then it's just.
Yeah. It's all been like the same thing. Baseball's been around a long time. And now it's just like back in the day before all this tech was here, like maybe you could have been I throw a 2-0 changeup every single time and it works because guys take it and you can get away with that for like 6 months before someone picks up on it. Yeah. Now if you do it for 2 weeks, guys are in the other dugout like, oh yeah, this dude throws a 2-0 changeup. His last 3 starts, he's thrown every single time. So like buckle up. And then it's like, all right, well, you now have a shorter window to be able to take advantage of stuff that works because eventually it's just this like rise and fall of like pitchers versus hitters. Yeah, they know stuff on me. I know stuff on them. And it's like a bunch of like reverse psychology. Like,
yeah, I feel like in years past, like the fastball up in the zone has been the pitch that like you throw, and now hitters are going, okay, well now we got to like adjust, like fix that,
Yeah.
dropping that bad angle, and they got to try and get up a little bit more just to
Yeah.
make it, a
And then
little competitive.
there's a side of it too where guys are getting so nasty now where it's like, all right, dude, I don't care if you know it's coming. I'm still gonna throw it. Like,
Yeah.
because it's wicked, So same thing going on like on that release point conversation of like, oh, you got to drop your arm slot a little bit to throw a nastier slider and someone might pick up on it. Well, if dropping your arm slot a little bit creates a slider that's that freaking nasty, like maybe you just do it. It's like, all right,
Maybe you just lean into it. Yeah.
all right, cool. All right, cool. You picked it up early. Well, it's still a freaking hammer. So good. Like, and the data backs that up, right? So it's like, yeah, I dropped my arm slot a little bit, but hitters are hitting 040 against this pitch. So I'm going to keep dropping my arm slot on it because apparently, even if they can't tell the difference, nobody's touching it. So
yeah,
let's make the nastiest pitches possible, and I don't care how we get there. Some guys are more blessed than others in that department, but
yeah. I've played with a number of them, and it's a lot of fun to watch. There's some guys, it's just, I know it. Everyone in the dugout knows it. Everyone in the other dugout knows it. Like that they're throwing a fastball, and it's just good night. See you later. Like Rowansi Contreras is one of those guys. Like he doesn't care. He's gonna bring 97 right by you.
Yeah, and I know, especially the guys with that kind of stuff now. It's like, we're over here maybe with like less than plus shit, saying like, oh, I gotta locate here. I gotta sequence this way. Like a lot of these guys now are just like, if I throw this anywhere near the plate, I'm gonna strike out.
It's over. Yeah.
So like I just gotta throw it middle. I know it's like a philosophy a lot of guys have now, especially if their stuff's got good ride to it or they've got nasty enough stuff where it's just like, all right, I'm starting everything middle and good luck hitting it because it's 99 with plus movement. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun to watch these days, man. But hey, let's kind of, wrap this up because I don't want to keep you all day, man. This has been awesome.
I love these talks, dude. I get to nerd out a little bit. It's cool.
Yeah, dude, it's fun. This side of baseball, like most of my teammates have like started to buy into this stuff, but I feel like there's still a lot of guys that haven't, and it's still just it's great information. And any guys coming up, like anyone that's younger, if like parents are listening to this, whatever, like hopefully they learn something and they can help out the next generation of baseball players too. But usually at this point, I ask guys like when is their team going to win the World Series? You don't play for a team exactly, but do you plan on, what do you see happening in the future for you? Do you want to stay with Baseball Cloud all the way until
absolutely
Baseball Cloud is just everywhere?
Yeah, exactly. That's my goal. I was employee number 2 at Baseball Cloud.
Holy shit. I knew you started when it was just a baby. Yeah.
I was in the first batch of interns and stuck around. So that was after my senior year. So Brooks Robinson, do you know Brooks?
Yeah, I know Brooks. Yeah.
You know Brooksy. So our CEO, Kevin Davidson, he played in the minor league.
KD, right?
KD played in the Astros organization for 7 years. After his playing career was over, he became a financial advisor for over 30 big leaguers and was in the like money management world. So he was to give you like the little background of the company. So one of the guys he worked with was Jose Bautista. And going into that offseason with Toronto was like one of the first off seasons where clubs had access to all this data and they were using it. And the players had no idea that this was even being captured half the time, but they were starting to use it against the players to like drive contract value down. So his goal was to get a certain contract value, and the team was hammering him on his exit velocity decreasing or his swing and miss going up and all these different things. And he's like, I don't know what this is. So KD was kind of seeing that up close, and long story short, basically figured out that there was a hole where colleges, high schools, travel teams, a whole bunch of people were starting to get access to the technology, but they didn't have what the Blue Jays had, which was a portal that allowed him to take data, which is just a spreadsheet, allowed them to turn those numbers into, here's your heat map, here's your exit velocity, here's your spray chart, and make it pretty like what we were looking at, turning it into a 3D baseball that you actually see a baseball spinning instead of just a sheet of 1,000 numbers. Yeah,
the 1,000 numbers is tough. When you show me the baseball, something I can actually like look at and understand.
Exactly.
Easier.
So he saw an opportunity downstream and really believed that this information was going to play a huge role in future generations of baseball. So he basically started the company with that idea in mind, is we want to be what you do with the data. So if you're a high school player, if you're a parent of a kid trying to play in college, or if you're the pitching coach at Vanderbilt, we want to provide solutions that help you out, and you don't have to have major league resources to make this stuff useful. So we're going like crazy. I'd love, like, personally, I haven't totally ruled out. I think it'd be pretty cool to work for a club one day and get back in that place where you're trying to win a championship.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much that rivals that. I think it's like the sweetest bit of competition there is. But
I was gonna say, dude,
I'm
I
learning
feel like if
too.
you got a shot to work with the Rays, man, I feel like you would be biting at it.
Yeah, I love those dudes and what they got over there. But yeah, I think that's something that could be in the future. But I'm finding now that, like, in the private sector, if you want to call it that, like in business, you get the same kind of competitive itch, and trying to blow something up and trying to make it really cool for people. And the other cool part of it is like every day I'm talking to 10 different college programs and 2 agents and a pro organization. And it's like, I'm getting to interact with a lot of different people in the baseball industry. Whereas, like, if I was working for one club, you get to go all in with one group of guys, which is really cool, but it's kind of less diverse in terms of the people you get to deal with. So that's another perk of this too. But yeah, I'm all in what we're doing, man. I want to see it through, and whether we get acquired by a big company in a couple of years, or whether it becomes this big thing that's going to last a long time, like, just riding it out. So it's been a pretty cool experience so far.
Dude, that's fantastic, man. I'm really happy for you. It looks like you absolutely love this job. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
God, dude, hopefully I just play baseball for a long time, but if not, dude, I'm going to try to come work for you guys, because that sounds like a lot of fun.
I know. Yeah. We're, like I said, man, it's really taken off, and we're going to need people pretty soon. Like you said, I hope you don't have to worry about getting a job anytime soon, but and definitely, like we talked about, man, like, we're building, like, our company builds things for baseball players. So that's why like I told you, I should have reached out sooner. But definitely, as we come out with new features and different things, like in our pitching products or reports, like, I want to put all that in front of you so you can tell me, like, dude, that shit sucks, that's confusing, or like, this is really good. Like, guys would love that, because you're still doing it. And like, that's the best feedback we can have, is like, does this help you? Would this help you? Do you think it's cool? Do you think it's stupid? Like, and that's just we have a lot of ideas around here, and it's just trying to figure out what's going to stick and what people will like.
Dude, that's fantastic, man. This has been awesome. Last question I like to ask everybody, though, before we go. If you could talk to Eric Sexton when he was 16 years old, what do you think you'd tell him?
Oh, that's a good one.
Any kind of advice.
I would say, the most important thing, and this is something I've learned from Katie, especially, the most important thing you can do as a young person, even our age now, is just build your network. Talk to as many people as possible, DM as many people as possible, try to get as many contacts in your phone as you possibly can, from all different areas, not just in what you want to do, but the more people you have access to and have good relationships with, the more doors it's going to open in the future. I got this opportunity because of a friendship that I had, years before I was even thinking about working. And the more people the more connections you have, just the more opportunities that's going to open up. So for anyone out there listening to this, even if you're, our age and still a pro baseball player, like, make as many friends as you can in the game, make as many friends as you can all over the place, because you never know when you're going to need access to someone who knows about finances or stocks, and you're never going to know when you're going to need someone who has advice on, agency stuff, or
this, that, or the other thing. Yeah.
This, that, or the other. Exactly. So that's been pretty eye-opening for me, is seeing, like, and it's like the most overused term ever, but it's so true. Like, it's all about who you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you never know, just from one phone call that you have for 30 minutes, like, you're going to stick in that person's mind. And if an opportunity comes up, or like, oh wait, that kid was asking a lot of good questions, maybe he'd be good for this internship or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, and then they're like, then that could open up, just because you reached out or sent a text or a DM to somebody, even if you think there's no way they're going to answer, this person's big time, just fire them off, man. Because you can't have too many relationships. You can't have too many connections.
Dude, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Always be building your network. That's really great.
It's massive.
Eric, this has been awesome, man. I can't thank you enough for coming on and doing this.
Appreciate it, man. It's a lot of fun. Anytime.